Hey, you guys are so good. Are you chilled out today? Are you relaxed today? Are you listening to this while you're on a retreat, maybe taking some time out, listening to a cool podcast? I don't know. You guys are awesome. Welcome to the Mission Accepted show. And you know what you're doing here. You're either listening and laughing to us taking the mission. You're like, no way, thank you. You go do it. You go, girl. Or you're like, I think I would love to take the mission, not quite sure yet, or you're in it and there's no way out. And you're like, I need to hear about other people being on the mission because what was I thinking? Or you're like, chilling out, you're loving it. So glad you made this decision and you should be my next guest. So you should just call me and let me know about that. But you guys are the best audience ever. I just want to recognize and acknowledge you. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for supporting the people that are on the other side of this and they're coming and they're sharing their stories. Thank you so much. And the reason why you guys are like the most chilled out, knowing you need a retreat is because we have an incredible woman with us today. She is a fellow podcaster, and I got to witness moments ago as she just did a monumental podcast for herself, hitting that wonderful, sexy number of 50. And we all know it gets better once you're 50. It gets better once you're 50, even in the land of podcasts. And this woman's a super cool woman. Honestly, she's organizing retreats. She has a historic reputation as a teacher. She's teaching people how to do retreats. She's knocking it out. I'm going to let her tell you the name of her podcast because it's friggin' awesome, and tell her, and she's going to explain to us why she named it that. But Jill, welcome to Mission Accepted. Thank you for coming onto the show today.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Deb. I love that introduction. Uh, yeah, Deb was just on my podcast literally minutes ago, and
Yeah.
now that we've changed hats here, the name of my podcast is The Geeky Grandma with an Encouraging Nudge. And yes, I'm a grandma, but I'm truly geeky too, because you wouldn't think a woman at my age would love technology, but I absolutely fell in love with it. And a grandmother you might think of her giving you cookies or putting you on your lap. I'm more likely to take your picture in front of a green screen and turn it into a movie. But yes, we unconditionally love our grandchildren, but we also would have a little bit of a firm nudge if we see that they aren't quite living up to what they need to do. And we've seen the potential. We've been around the block, and you gain a little wisdom along the bumps and bruises along the way. And speaking of retreats, this background behind me, that is literally looking off the front porch of our retreat center. And we look out on this beautiful, gorgeous water. And sometimes we even see a mother and father eagle taking a baby eaglet for a flying lesson. And we've got a retreat there in 2 weeks. So excited about that.
Oh, wow. So there's lots to unpack there. And I think that we all appreciate, there's nothing wrong with having your grandparents, give you a little, whatever it is, a little gift, or let's go get some ice cream, or let's go for a walk. But there's something very different from that. Other generation, like, we may not listen to our parents, but we're going to listen to our grandparents. We give them a little bit of credentials. And I think that it is really important, right? I think it's important because we can impart, trust me, I try to talk to my children, but when I'm talking to my daughter's daughter, she just thinks I'm the cat's meow. I walk in the house and she's like, yeah, 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 yeah. Like, she's excited to see me. My daughter's like, hey, I'm like, hey, nice to see you, kiss on the cheek. But she's not jumping up and down like my little grand yeah is. And they just have this admiration for us and understanding that, what, hey, like, I can say, hey, and no problem. I can get my granddaughter to do things with a little, hey, little finger up in the air that, my daughter takes an hour to get her to do. So I think that we do have some things to share. Absolutely. So I just absolutely love the title of your show. And I love the reasoning of your show. And I also love the last question that you asked me on your show. And that was, the generation. I mean, it's not common that you hear someone, like when you said your age, I don't even know how old you are, but from your generation that absolutely loves technology and sticking their grandkid in front of a green screen and going, hey, let's make a Sunday afternoon movie. Forget the popsicle house. Let's do this. And so you don't hear that often. But I love the question that you asked me, which was, what would you say to people, in the generation where they're like, I don't know, maybe technology is scaring me or things are scaring me. What do you find that is the factor that is making people that are wiser, right? Not wanting to take as many risks or not wanting to get out there, like you're having to give them this nudge. What's stopping them, you think?
Well, in technology, it might be fear. Um,
Hmm.
Along with being a teacher, I also did technology coaching at people's houses. I taught a 70-year-old lady how to do a spreadsheet so that she could keep her bowling scores for her bowling league, and I also taught her a publisher so she could make a little newsletter for her people. The one that really got me is I taught a lesson to a man so he could write an email to his grandson in college. The man's heart literally stopped, because of anything I did, but in future weeks, he came back to life, came back, and I gave him another lesson. His life wasn't over. So, those are people that are still going. And the people, and my age happens to be 68, but a lot of people in my generation have spent their whole life doing for everybody else. They knew what their
Mm.
kids loved. They knew what their husband loved. They did the time on the baseball cushion in the stands, looking at all of that. They did all of that, and they did it wonderfully. And mostly, they might have even enjoyed it, or at least given it their best. But they didn't know that it was okay for them to have a turn. And
Mm.
that's what I want to do. I call it sitting in a birthday girl seat. That, everyone else has been on that stool, that pedestal, but they didn't know that it was all right for them to be there too. And sometimes I need to remind them what gifts they have. I talk a lot about gifts and talents, and I help women find it. I had one woman said, no, I can't do anything. Well, come to find out, she was a marvelous seamstress, and I encouraged her, and she did a little sewing that I needed done for a retreat. She made some little bags for me, and she said, "Oh, that was no big deal. I could do that." And then next thing I knew, she was teaching a quilting class at my next retreat. And she just said, you kept nudging me out into deeper and deeper water. But the payoff was the wonderful grin on her face after she did do those bigger goals. So,
That's, I mean, I can't wait. I mean, you guys, I don't know when you're listening to this podcast, because of course our podcast make itself around the world a couple of times. But you're going to hear Jill sharing. She is one of our key speakers in the November Stand Up, Speak Up, and Show Up Yes You summits. And you can now see why we would want her to have as a speaker, because it's that yes you. And you can see how she goes in and she finds and highlights a talent. So many of us don't recognize yourself, and same thing. I mean, it was a very different time. It was a very different time where it was a lot of serving other people and being the best we could, and not always. I mean, I even think the best of us that might meditate or might have gone through that process still forget about the parts of ourselves that should shine, that we should recognize, that we should honor. And I think a lot of times we take it for granted, right? We always think that our gifts are so easy for everyone else. Like I'm like, oh yeah. People like, I don't know how you had, so many people over for dinner. I'm like, it's easier to cook for 30 than two. And they're like, for who? I'm like, for me. I'd rather cook with 30. You know what I mean? They're like, I don't know how you put those foods together. Like, what recipe? I'm like, I make up recipes in my head. They're like, who does that? I go, everybody. They're like,
everybody,
no, it's not true.
no,
Or people have skills, right? Like,
yeah.
you make movies. I was like, hey, we should so I think that's a really beautiful thing that you do. You take it to You take people where they're at, and then you don't let them off the hook. You
Yeah.
don't, you know, you don't let them off the
Off
hook.
the hook. Well, that's the same thing that I did when I was in education. I was a second grade teacher for 20 years. And, you had to take them. If a kid came into your room and he didn't even know his alphabet, you had to start where they were. As much as I wanted to, I could have taught him second grade all day long, but if he wasn't ready for it, he wasn't ready for it. So you take them where they are, you take them as far as you're able with the skills that you have, and then they have to go on by themselves after there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how did you fall into retreats? I mean, I just listened to you describe, and I know that some people are listening and not watching, and the background that you described of the eagles and the little eaglet, I'm like, you had me right there. Now I'm a retreat lover, and I should go to more. Shouldn't we all go to more? And I was just so grateful to be able to speak at some or to facilitate some. I'd like to go be that quiet person receiving some more. But how did you get into retreats?
Well, kind of a long story. I came home from kindergarten. My report card branded as shot. Now. But and then I got into third grade just when people were starting to go and stay overnight at people's houses. I was so excited at the opportunity that I put myself in a shell for 4 years. Now, that doesn't seem to make sense, but at that time it didn't feel safe to come out and to go back and forth with other people. And so I did a lot of internal work, let's say, and it took me a long time to get brave enough to come out. And I really felt I missed that overnight stuff with Girls House. I have three brothers and I have four sons, and my heart hungers to be around women. It doesn't mean I don't love my kids or my brothers, but women need to connect with other women. We
Mhm.
talk different, we think different, and I just long for it. If I hear somebody talking a little gruff about their sister, I just want to say, "You have a sister." My ideas are kind of a little idealistic, okay? But
Mhm.
I need to be around women, and um, the we talked on my show a few minutes ago how one pastor gave me a little chance to get my wings, and she listened to my story of wanting to go over, spend overnight with other women. And she did a sample retreat for me. And then the next year I did the retreat myself. And it gave me that opportunity. I do a 25-hour retreat. It's an overnight with women. It's not humongous, but it's a chance. I started it at a point when I was still working. It gets you away from the house, gets you away from the kids. We made the meals when we started as simple as possible so nobody had to cook. And it just, we did it the best we could. We even started out, you bring 3 items of food and that pays for your weekend. We did whatever it took to get the women there, and we did them in local churches and slept on the pews. So, we started where we were and we did what we could. And I had been in teaching about 10 years when I realized my heart wasn't in it. Now, that sounds horrible because you would think that's where a woman's heart ought to be. But I needed to be around women. When I
Mhm.
was with the little kids, I felt people taking, but when you're
Mm.
around women, we all give to each other. And I needed the reciprocal part of doing that. And I stuck it out through I got my was able to get pension, but that's giving me the opportunity now to run a business and not have to worry. And so that's where it was. I just fell in love with it.
That's awesome. And it's great to be, I think, like, when we say things like, my heart stopped being in it. I mean, there's no shame in that. I think we all have a season. Like, things are brought into our lives for seasons, which is why I think, the allowance and the word entrepreneur. And I always say it's an entrepreneur that can't say no, but it's also allowing that you can love two things at once. One thing doesn't have to override the other, accepting that there's many steps we take in one career to take us to our next step, or to show us. And I think it's okay. It's kind of like, look, we have no guilt after wearing a clothing item for 10 years. It's like, that's not my style anymore. I don't fit that style anymore. That was at a different time in my life.
My life.
Yeah, no different with our careers, no different with, like, now if you keep your bell bottoms long enough, they'll come back in style. But we
they were pretty neat.
no, that's right. So look, I'm just going to kind of throw a whole different question out there. So you do retreats. You've got this incredible podcast. You guys go check out her show, subscribe to her show. It's amazing and it's fun. And we know some things about you, but I'm a bucket list person. I love to know what's on people's bucket lists, and I think it's important that we say our bucket list out and we put it out to the world. So what is something personal or business? It doesn't have to do anything with what we're talking about today. What is something that we're going to put out in the universe for you? What's something that you want, Jill?
Okay. Think of me as a pitcher. It's a hard word to say, the thing that pours.
All right, like a jug. Okay.
Yeah. I love to learn. I want to go to women's events and get filled up, meet new people, new opportunities, and go to another one and pour out and give to those people. And then go back and do it all over again. And I want to travel around the country as I'm doing it. That's what I want to do.
Awesome. Okay. And if you had one place in the world, right? Let's just get really pinpointy so someone can hear your request. So if there was one place in the world, that's it. There's just one retreat. That's what's going to start off this whole thing. Where in the world would that retreat be?
Colorado.
All right. All right. You heard it. Colorado. Let's get it going, Colorado. Okay. You can give Jill a call. Look, you run a business. And I'm a big, I teach a lot about top performance, right? That's kind of my thing. That's what I teach. I teach people how to, be able to maximize the time in their business and reverse engineer and what have you. What's something that you do in your business that you consider top performance that you can share? That saves you time or brings you to your goals quicker. What's something that you do for your business that you would consider one of your top performance skills?
Well, I'm a little like that eagle, that I bring a very unique perspective to whoever or whatever I'm dealing with. I have a knack of being able to, one of my coaches called it like laser pinpoint where an issue is, where a problem is, what needs to be moved a little bit in order to move it on. In the old days, a television repairman would come to the house back when TVs had tubes, and the guy comes in and he taps one tube and he says, "That'll be $100." And the man says, "That's robbery. Uh, you only tapped one tube." And he says, "It was only $1 for a tap in that tube, but it was $99 for knowing which one to tap." and that's who I am. And that's what I work with, the gentler ladies in the world, the ones that are the HSPs or the projectors or the empaths. And I know how hard the world is for them, but I also know the great, wonderful gifts that they have for the world. And I know that the world can be uncomfortable for them, but there are ways for them to work around it and to feel the benefit of all that they have to give and feel really good about themselves. And that's who I want to help.
Awesome. Awesome. So your top performance technique or your advice for people is really being able to tap into where you see the biggest problem. What's gleaming, kind of deal with that, find a way to find a solution to that. I know that we're wrapping up pretty quickly today, and I know that we get to hear of you again in the summit, which we're so excited. We can't wait. Is there anything, I have one last question that I want to ask you, but is there anything else that you want to share? Please, when you're sharing, please mention your podcast name. If someone wants to learn how to run a retreat, you're the one to call. If you have a retreat and you want Jill to come and speak or get filled up, you know who to call. But how can people reach you? And is there any last words that you want to say to our Mission Accepted audience today, Jill?
The name of my podcast is The Geeky Grandma with an Encouraging Nudge. And in the retreats I did, my very first retreat, a phrase came up, and it was heart's desires. And a heart's desire isn't just some splash in the pan, a little thing that ran through your head when you looked at the ad in the paper. But that's something really deep, really personal that nobody else knows about you. That's what I want to ask you. That's a mission I would hope your ladies do, is to go for that really deep heart's desires and go for it. You can do it. I know you can.
Awesome. Okay, so one last question, completely off topic again, is I love music. My audience knows that I'm going to be, walking in Ireland with my girlfriend Corrine to raise money for the music community, and everything that music does to us, we want to be able to give back. And so if that appeals anyone, you want to hop onto that party wagon. We've got some incredible auctions that we're doing. If anyone wants to donate items or gifts or services, we're going to be able to put that all out there and raise some money for this incredible cause. So outside of doing a plug for They Did It tour, I wanted to bring us to the power of music. And the power of music is so powerful. You talk about being nudged. People are nudged by music. People are inspired by music. People are moved by music. People dance around their living room when no one's watching to music. But here's what I want to ask you. So you're on your way to a desert island. Maybe there's a retreat there, maybe not. But you've got one suitcase and it's you, and you only have room for one album. And that's it. So you're onto this desert island for the rest of your days. What album are you going to take with you that you could not imagine not listening to for the rest of your days?
I would bring Anne Murray. The world sure could use a little good news today.
Wow. Oh, Anne Murray, welcome to Canada. Oh, welcome to Canada. Our Canadian Anne Murray. She's amazing, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah. Canada's in the house today. Jill, what a pleasure to have you on your show. We're so happy that you were here today. Thank you for showing up. And we know that we're going to see you again. And audience, thank you as well for showing up. Please share with us your comments. If you want to be part of anything that we've talked about or anything that Jill's talked about today, you know how to reach us. This is not difficult, people. It's called debdrummond.com. Just go on there and have some fun and reach out. And you also have Jill's information in the show notes. So thank you once again for listening. Thanks for being rock stars. And Jill, thank you so much for being on the show today. And until next time, you guys, which is probably only a few days away because we're talking to a lot of cool people, be well and stay groovy. See you soon. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye.